E te atua, kaharawa, ko koe te tohu rangatira, te tohu mā tauranga. Manakitia mai mātou, au pononga I tēnei rā. E mahi nei o mātou mahi mo te painga o ngā tangata o te kaunihira o Rotorua. Takua mai, kia tau te rangi Mārie, ki runga I a mātou I ngā wā katoa, ko ihu karaiti hoki tō mātou ariki. Almighty God, who alone is the leader of all mankind, and the fountain of all knowledge, send thy blessing upon us, your servants, this day, as we strive to do all things good for the betterment of the people of the Rotorua district. May we be tolerant in ourselves at all times, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. And now we'll move to apologies, and I have a mover and a seconder, please, that the apologies from Councillor Bentley, Kumar and Councillor Gould be accepted. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Rokawa-Tate. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? There appear to be none. We move to urgent items on the agenda. Are there any urgent items? Yes.
Madam Chair, I won't raise it in urgent items. I'll raise it in staff report, but I just want to share with the community, and I know that you were present, the raging success of the Māoris versus Fiji fixture in Rotorua last weekend.
Yes, it was a raging success, and I think we might be getting somewhere with our strategy to make this the home of the Māori All Blacks. So we need everybody's support for that. Phenomenal to see the interest from the community, and what an atmosphere it was.
Talk about it now, Madam Chair, because I don't want to weaken the work that our staff did. In particular, I want to pay tribute to Steve Watney and to Rob Pikesley and the team at events, who went out and raised something like $45,000 so that all children from decile 5 and below had the opportunity to attend the fixture and also have a meal. And I think that's the proactiveness, the people who work quietly behind the scenes, who don't expect the headlines in the Daily Post or any other media, but just get on and do the work in the betterment of this community. I mean, we're all elected representatives, and we sit back to some degree and take the kudos for it. But these guys, these men and women that we pay to do extraordinary things, certainly do extraordinary things, and they seldom get recognised for it. So I'd just like to pass on, if we could ask the Chief Executive Officer to pass on our sincere thanks to the whole of the events team and those involved in putting that fixture on. I know there were over 150 volunteers that were also involved, and it was a huge community event where nearly 14,000 people attended. And I think that you're right, Your Worship, it sends the right messages in terms of us wanting fixtures for the Chiefs and any of the second and third tier All Black or New Zealand representative games like the Argentinas, the Māori All Blacks, New Zealand Universities. Those types of games can come to Rotorua, and they know that they will be well looked after. But I'm sure Councillor Maxwell and others who were at the game would echo my thoughts.
The other aspect was the community events leading up to
the
Ahude Pacifica.
Yes.
Amazing. I went to the church service up at Tangatarua, and it was absolutely beautiful. And the community could join in. So lovely when we make a whole event of anything like that. Not really an urgent item, but one that the whole weekend of sports that made us all very excited, actually. I thought you were going to also acknowledge Nolene Taurua. We should. She comes from and has been so involved here. What a success there. So that's our little sports.
Missed an opportunity that a letter go from you and that she'd signed by the Chief Executive Officer. I'm happy to countersign it as Sport and Recreation, because Nolene was based in Rotorua for many, many years as coach of the Magic, and then when she went to Australia and came back to coach the New Zealand team, at 2:30 in the morning, I just couldn't watch the last 5 minutes. I went out and picked some daffodils. Neighbours must have thought I was nuts, but that was the I've been there and done that so many times before, where we've been on the edge of winning and we've missed out. And then I came back and I heard the words New Zealand World Champions, and that was it for me. But to Nolene and the girls who were overlooked in the past because of stupid rules, came together on that one night, and man, did they play out of their skin. So congratulations to them. And I'm sure Your Worship, you'll send a letter on that.
Madam Mayor, I'll just say, I support the words that you both have said, and I think it was tremendous. And also, I'm part of another organisation, NZCT, that saw the value in this and the lead up, and it came to fruition. Pacifica and all the different things that happened during the week, and took a relative along, Kaumato from whānau Apanui, and never been out to our stadium before, and the atmosphere, he just loved it before the game even started. So I support all the words that you will see. Kia ora.
There is one other matter, sorry to labour it, I won't say anything more, Your Worship. I do want to also pass on acknowledgement to one of our colleagues around the table here, who is at the forefront of ensuring that issues with regards to children, all children, not only Māori children, but all children in this country are given a fair deal and a fair go. And I think I'm very proud of Councillor Kawa-Tate, who is also proud to announce on national TV that she is a Rotorua District Councillor, a Rotorua Lakes Councillor, and that she and what her roles are, and she's proud of us and we're proud of you. So I just want to, through you, Your Worship, thank Councillor Kawa-Tate and keep the mahi going.
Thank you. I think it's very nice. It's not our last meeting. Our last meeting is on the 22nd of August, but a great feeling of goodwill. Thank you. Now we move to the confirmation of council minutes. Do I have a mover for the motion that the minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of June be confirmed as a true and accurate record? A mover, Councillor Donaldson. Seconded, Councillor Maxwell. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. Recommendations from other committees, page 14. Do I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report? The report recommendation from other committees. Moved, Councillor Sturt. Seconded, Councillor Roe Kawa-Tate. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. And now we need a mover and a seconder for recommendation 1, that the following recommendation of the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee held on the 11th of July be adopted. Recommendation 1. Progress a revised rates remission and postponement policy to encourage inner city development. Do I have a mover? Councillor Hunt. Seconder, Councillor Roe Kawa-Tate. Any questions?
The Chief Executive Officer around the general parameters of this policy to encourage inner city development, because I think it's quite a new concept, innovative, and if it's to encourage vacant land or land that is or buildings that aren't being used because they don't meet the earthquake standards, etc., etc. I'm quite excited by what this could provide. So, if the Chief Executive Officer could just give us a rundown on.
It was certainly. Sure. It was very well canvassed when.
Yes, I wasn't at the meeting.
No, so sort of high level.
Sure. Thank you, Worship. So the intent or the discussion really was around the idea that if a developer was looking at contemplating renewal of a building or redevelopment of a building, what this would allow them to do would be to actually have confidence that the rates level will stay the same for a period of time, 3, 4, 5 years, and therefore will actually provide an incentive for a developer to actually undertake the development. So that's the intent. It's in place in other localities such as Wellington, and has actually been seen as quite quite a good mechanism to actually get developers to look at buildings and say, look, I won't keep on putting off investment into my building. There's an opportunity here to undertake development. The issue that has been raised with us, or was raised through obviously the Chamber of Commerce, is that many developers see that once they've undertaken development, with a new valuation being undertaken on the building, all of a sudden there's a significant rates increase, and that can actually be seen as if you like, a negative aspect that says, well, that will undermine my return on investment, so therefore I'm going to put it off. So that would take that away.
There was not about rates alone being the answer. It's not the magic bullet. So it was along with the treatments that we'd already proposed, that we looked at speed limits, parking, the green corridor, all those treatments, and then this is another layer. Yeah. Would that reflect correctly the meeting, Councillor Kent? Yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to restate my position from that meeting. I don't personally believe that a rates remission is going to do anything whatsoever to build one single building. We are not remotely going far enough, and personally I believe this is a total waste of time. We should be putting the effort into a complete strategy to revitalise the CBD, addressing the issues and the problems, not trying to stick a sticking plaster on it like this. And I was very pleased to see that a senior member of the real estate fraternity in Rotorua agrees with me.
Well, we're sort of getting into politicking, really, because I think we've all got a position on this to take into the next 11 weeks. But so it wasn't unanimous. Right. Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Worship. I certainly concur with the comments of Chief Executive. It's a policy for consultation and a decision of a future council, but it's just one tool in a toolkit. And I certainly got similar feedback to what Councillor Kent's articulated, that why are you just doing this one thing? Well, we're not. We're just putting it's proposed that a mechanism is put in place that's one of the tools in the toolkit, and that a comprehensive plan will be worked on with proper engagement with all of the interested community in the inner city. So on that basis, I do support.
Your Worship, I see merit in what Councillor Kent is saying, as well as what others in the Chamber are saying. I think if we can come up with a comprehensive items in the toolbox that can assist with development and growth, I think most of us around this table will support that. But I hear what Councillor Kent is saying. I don't think it is the panacea or the only thing, but let's have that discussion.
It wasn't put as a panacea, and well, I shouldn't say any more, but I'm excited by the number of people that have said I'd like to be part of that next stage of consultation, and that's what's coming out that's more exciting. No, not just the Chamber. No. Yeah, lots of people saying we'd like to be part of that discussion. Councillor Tapsell.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I just want to echo those thoughts as well, and focus on there is going to be a process of engagement, which I am glad of, because as my role of a representative on the Lakes Community Board, there are some comments in the Lakes area regarding the revised rates remission policy, considering the rates review that they had requested and some of the issues there. So I'm glad that it would be stakeholder engagement, but also public consultation. So bearing in mind that there will be further steps, I'm glad that we do have a mechanism, and as Councillor Donaldson said, a tool which is only part of a much wider strategy. So I will be voting for, but wanted to voice those concerns of some other people within the community.
Are there any questions for clarification? No? Well, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Yes. Councillor Kent recorded. The next recommendation, I need a mover and a seconder, the appointment of Commissioner to Rotorua District Licensing Committee. Do I have a mover? Councillor Maxwell, seconded Councillor Kent. That Council agree that the Chief Executive appoint Councillor Karen Hunt to be a Commissioner under the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act 2012 for a period of up to 5 years. It's been put and seconded. Are there any questions or clarification? There appeared to be none. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? Carried. And I would just like to say there that this is a very complex role, and it's a quasi-judicial role and must be trained. It's not just pluck anybody off the street to do this job, and I hear sometimes the hearings are quite protracted and complex. So thank you for the work you've done, and I hope you enjoy the role. Thank you. We move now to the following recommendation from the Resource Management Act Policy Committee. That's our committee, and I note, Gina, that you're here. Thank you for being here to support our councillors on that committee. Recommendation 1, miscellaneous changes and plan change 5, signage and miscellaneous changes, request to approve and make operative. Do I have a mover? Thank you. A seconder? Councillor Donaldson. That the council approve the provisions in plan change 1 and 5 to the district plan, and that the council instructs the affixing of council seal and notification of the operative date of the plan change. Are there any questions? Are you coming? Are you getting staff up? No. They're here. Staff are here if there are questions. Are there any questions for clarification? Yeah. Yeah. There appear to be none. I'm going to put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? Carried. We move now to staff reports. Recommendation 1, notification of proposed plan change 3, significant natural areas for submission. Do I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report? Thank you. Moved Councillor Rotorua-Tate, seconded Councillor Donaldson. That the report notification of proposed plan change 3, significant natural areas for submissions be received. Now you've got Henry, perhaps you need to give us an overview. Not a one-eyed overview, thank you Henry. He's had surgery on one eye. Thank you Henry, and you've got Kim with you. Thank you Kim.
So, thank you, Your Worship. And look, yes, just to introduce Kim Smith beside me, who is our Senior Policy Planner, who's done a phenomenal amount of work really on progressing this SNA process. And as we talk through it, you'll see both in terms of the legal framework, but also the engagement really out with the particularly rural community. So Kim will take us through a lot of the detail, but just a really a quick overview, and really these recommendations come from two sources. First is obviously through our own Resource Management Policy Committee, the recommendations coming up to Council, but there's also a dual recommendation that comes through from the Ngāti Raukawa and Rotorua Lakes Co-Governance Committee as part of the Ngāti Raukawa settlement. They took on a role in respect of plan changes which affect any part of their wider area of interest, whereby they sit with us on a co-governance group and make recommendations around the key decisions in the planning process. And this one's obviously the key decision around notification. So probably that's the second thing I just want to make clear at the outset. What the fundamental decision we're asking of Council here is a notification decision. We're asking, we've moved from the pre-notification engagement into, okay, we're ready now to go out and go into the formal RMA submission process. So it's not a decision on substance, it's a decision on to go out and start the formal legal process. And if we could just have our presentation.
while that's there,
Yep.
can you just explain why the makeup of the Joint Governance Committee is made up that way?
It came out of the settlement, the treaty settlement with Ngāti Rotorua, and the planning process was identified by them during that settlement discussion as being of critical importance to them. So obviously their interest is more focused on the Waikato region, but the area of interest extends certainly into the southern parts of our district, but also a bit wider than that. So yeah, so as part of this process, they take on a decision-making role and recommendatory role.
So that's one of the co-governance committees that arise from a treaty settlement?
Yes, that's right.
Gotcha.
That's right. Sorry, I don't know how to move on to the second page. But the second thing before I hand on to Kim that I wanted to talk about is just to give you the background of this process really, and why it's come in front of you. And fundamentally, we went through the district planning process in 2012, 2013. SNAs were incorporated into the district plan at that time. But as a result of submissions that came through really from regional councils and I think from DOC, there were a number of unresolved issues around SNAs, and the commitment was made by the council at that stage to carry on essentially to a second stage of the work and to look at, round about 50 or 60 more SNA sites. So there was a commitment given at the time the district plan was approved that this was unfinished business that needed to be completed. And I guess just to give a little bit of the legal context in terms of the RMA, one of the matters that's identified as a matter of national importance in the RMA is around the protection of significant areas of Indigenous flora. That provision is essentially given effect to through regional policy statements, which we're then required to implement through our district plan. And some of you might have seen something the other day, I think came out of Hutt City, where the council made a call they weren't going to implement any of it through their district plan, and are now heading for court as a result of this. So essentially, we are required through the RMA and coming down through the regional policy statement to implement the protection of Indigenous biodiversity and through the SNA mechanisms. I think that's probably all in terms of background. So the next couple of things I was keen that we just talk through is really the approach we've taken through this pre-formal notification stage and how we've got to the position we've got to. And Kim will take us through that.
Yeah, so just sort of in summary, the plan change report that you received, the really large one that was circulated. So the content of it, what's proposed in there is basically to take forward the recommendations that have come from our consulting ecologists. So they were commissioned to look at the sites that were unconfirmed at the first round when the district plan was adopted and there were decisions on the district plan. There was about 50 sites that were unconfirmed, so they've investigated those. They've also investigated around 11 sites due to landowner complaint. Basically, they wanted the boundaries relooked at, and they've also looked at some geothermal sites because the Waikato study has suggested that the boundaries needed some tweaking and that there were several missing from our district plan. So they've looked at all those and recommended some new SNAs and also some boundary changes to existing SNAs. So the proposal is to take most of those forward through to be notified for submissions, but we have moderated what the ecologists have recommended in several ways. And to summarise, those 4 categories sort of cover most of them where we're proposing to moderate what the ecologists have suggested. So that number 1, that's where there's other legal protections. So our district plan, when it was the first set went through, we didn't include things that were protected through QE2 or Ngā Whenua Rāhui, so in covenants. So we've taken that approach forward and excluded those. Also, there were some very, very minor intrusions into some properties, and just for simplicity and administrative efficiency, we've sort of cut back these minor intrusions around the boundaries of some properties. And then I guess a little bit more complex, where we've consulted with landowners and they've indicated some costs and put into question whether the balance of the costs and benefits weigh out. There's been some moderation there, so that might be something like, well, we need to get our plantation forestry harvest out, and we need to widen this access, and this access is right on the boundary of one of the sites, so we've suggested to clip it back a little bit just so that they don't have to go through a resource consent process. There might be another situation would be where there's a dwelling and they're saying, well, we're really concerned about light into our dwelling, so we've drawn the boundary back to allow light and for them to trim trees without being concerned about the rules. And the last one is where we've proposed to moderate it, is where we don't feel that we've met the test of giving the landowners reasonable opportunity to be involved in consultation to shape the proposal. So that was just a very small proportion of the total sites, but there were a few where we didn't have landowner details, and we don't feel that we've met our test. So we're proposing not to take those ones forward. So carry on. Just to give you a little bit of background about the approach that we've taken to consultation. So the direction for this project was very much that we had to give landowners, we had to have a high level of confidence that we'd given landowners opportunity to be involved in shaping the proposal, and this is even before it goes out to be notified for submissions. So on that basis, we started off by sending all the affected landowners letters, and then we didn't have very good response rate from that. So we then followed up with nearly all of them, just excluding the ones that had very, very minor impacts, using our council databases to either phone them or email them or both. So still not everybody chose to respond, but we probably had about 70 correspondences, around 60% of those 110 that have more than minor impacts. And we really did genuinely try to moderate the proposal where we could to address concerns while still giving effect to the regional policy statement that requires us ultimately to protect through our district plan the significant natural areas. So also in front of you today are several other recommendations that have come through from the RMA Policy Committee, and these were prompted by our consultation with landowners. They were asking us about, what does council do, as well as the regulation, what support is there as well. So they've recommended that the rates remission policy be investigated at the next annual plan for properties that have significant natural areas, or QE2s or ngā whenua rāhui. So at the moment there is rates remission for QE2 covenants, but it is there's some administrative issues with that in terms of having to get valuations, and that can sort of outweigh the benefits in terms of the rates remission. So next time the rates are looked at, looking at maybe a more practical approach to rates remission. And our consultation with landowners suggested that even if the amount remitted is quite small, it still would be meaningful for them in terms of being, a gesture in acknowledgement of the role of their properties in protecting biodiversity. Another recommendation is to amend the fees and charges policy for resource consent processing, so that non-notified consents for the restoration or conservation activities, so they don't have to pay resource consent fees. So often those won't trigger consent anyway, but in some instances they might. And the last one is that council investigate with the next long-term plan a contestable incentive fund for the restoration and protection of SNA. So that's something just to be investigated alongside all the other council priorities.
So just before we open for questions, I also just wanted to highlight a couple of things around the community input and engagement, and we've worked pretty closely with the Rural Community Board through this process. It's probably fair to say that it hasn't always been in total agreement with the approach we've been taking, and you'll see the position the Rural Board has put into the paper, which is essentially our position of saying, look, we don't support the imposition of any restrictions on private landowners. Regional Council also have come through, and probably sitting towards the other end of the spectrum. The Regional Council are signalling they've got a bit of a concern that we may be too flexible in our approach, and they would prefer to see really the recommendations of the ecologist simply adopted. So I guess the approach we're putting in front of you for notification and wider discussion with the community sits somewhere in between those two positions. To be honest, we don't actually think either position is particularly sustainable, and we think taking the position sort of through the middle is the right way to approach this. So happy for questions.
So just to make it clear, this is just about taking the SNAs out for open for submissions.
That's right, and it's not changing the district plan's policy framework around SNAs. It really is taking out the specific SNAs for consideration. And
Henry, for those that aren't close to the Resource Management Committee, just the fundamental purpose and the objective of an SNA, can you cover that off?
Yeah, so look, it is the principal tool really to help achieve that national objective around protection of Indigenous biodiversity. It's really the only mechanism which is used across the country, apart from obviously land purchase. So what it does is it imposes a restriction on the use of those areas. So the areas are mapped if they've got a particular significance, generally regional or national significance. The areas are mapped, and then there are restrictions on the use of those areas.
Thank you. It was Councillor Stewart, but you have a question or you want to add something, Councillor?
Just clarify, what is actually going out for public input does not include the recommendations of the committee, which is separate.
Cool. So we've got that clarified. Thank you. Right, questions now. Councillor Stewart, you were first, and then Councillor Donaldson.
Yeah, I think Henry's just answered my question. I was going to relate it to, I've got a 25 hectare block in Rotorua. 18 hectares of it is in native bush, which has got restrictions on the title. So this policy is going to cover that type of activity, because at the moment I'm paying rates on that land that I'm not allowed to use or create an income off. So is that too wide in terms of this, or is that directly in line? Because I can understand where the Rural Community Board's coming forward if it isn't clearly defined in terms of what, as Her Worship asked, to get an SNA defined. Because an SNA to me and to Karen would probably be two different things. But if we've got an all-encompassing policy, it has an impact consistently across the district. I don't have a problem with it. So, and I'm not close to the RMA, as you said you were.
Yeah, look, Henry, the SNA, just tell councillors where it is defined, because it is defined. No.
The rules and the policies around the SNAs are in the district plan. So essentially there's a chapter or a section of a chapter which sets out, if you have an SNA, these are the rules that will apply to it.
Yes.
The points on there, the other recommendations are for the new council to consider. Right. So they're quite separate, but they came out of the discussion with the community and from the Wildlands report, and so it seemed appropriate to add them at this point to say that while this this catch-up lot of SNAs, which is 50 plus, is being going out for consultation, and it's simply tidying up the leftovers that weren't able to be processed during the district plan. These other recommendations have come out of this process, and at a point when a rates review is done or considered, these are other aspects we would like considered. So they're sort of together, but they're actually quite separate.
It's quite complex. Councillor Donaldson, your question?
Thank you, Worship. Through you, thank you, Henry. Sound like my old footy coach, straight up the middle. Like that approach. My question is around the sites in the CNI land in Whakarewa Forest that are not, the recommendation is not to include in the district plan because of existing protections. So, from back in the day when I was involved in some advocacy, my understanding is some of those protective covenants expire at the end of the Crown Forest licence, the ones under the Crown Forest Assets Act. And I'm not quite sure how far that is away. So would we address that at that time as a further review of the district plan? I do see there are other protections such as the National Environmental Standards and the regional plan. So, but I just have a question about those covenants and a future expiry date.
Yeah, so look, our understanding is that the covenants do stay with the land even at the end of the licence. So at a minimum, it's 2043. We think it's perpetual, but regardless, there's time.
Kia ora, I just wanted to add to that. So I spoke with one of the officers from Ngā Whenua Rāhui regarding that point, and so his feedback was that particularly with the kawenata, they've been written, the wording is on perpetuity with a review after 25 years, but the intent is for them to be enduring. Okay. So that review process is more about improving that kawenata if it's required. But yeah, there is that 25-year review process required.
Thank you. That's it. Just my question, Henry. I understand why it's being done. Is it going to take a long time? I like your optimism that we might get it back next year when we look at rates and rates reviews. How long will this process sort of take? I know you don't want to put a ring around it, but there's a lot to get through.
Yes and no, and Kim can jump in, but I think most of the hard work's been done, I say reasonably hopefully. Once we move into notification, you do start moving into statutory timeframes. So that theoretically, we've got a process set out for us now. That the time where you can spend the most is really pre-notification, and certainly our theory is that if we get that as right as possible, and we think we have, there shouldn't be any reason why this won't clip on reasonably quickly. At the end of the day, it is what we're notifying is a number of sites that people can make submissions on a sort of, from a legal perspective, it's not that complicated. From a social perspective, it is. But look, I don't think there's any reason why it should take an unduly long time at all from now.
And I have to say, at one of our MOU meetings, this issue of SNAs was discussed for those councillors that came, and it was a great conversation that happened, and I think much more defining than they'd ever really realised. So, yeah, hopefully it's...
Just wanting to add one more point. Sorry, I guess from my position with Te Tatou and interest around whenua Māori, I was pretty strong on requesting officers to do some really hard work around the whenua Māori because of the complex nature of the Ture Whenua Act. Some have trusts, some do not. So I was satisfied with the result that came back. There are still some holes there, but they've been picked up on, and hopefully that will be through that submission process they'll be filled and addressed. So, kia ora.
Thank you. appear to be no more questions. Well done. So we are now going to vote. No, we need a mover and a seconder for the motion that the following additional recommendations of the RMA Policy Committee to Council from their meeting on the 11th of July 2019 to consider additional feedback on the draft plan change from the Bay of Plenty Regional Council and the Rural Community Board be adopted. Have a mover? Thank you. Seconder? Councillor Donaldson? Yeah. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? Carried. And recommendation 2, that Council amend the proposed plan change evaluation report, that's called a Section 32 report, which the RMA Policy Committee recommends to Council for adoption, to record a summary of the feedback from the Bay of Plenty Regional Council and Rural Community Board under the consultation section of the report. Yeah, seconded, Councillor Donaldson. Is there any discussion on this? Right, I'm going to put the motion that the following recommendation of the Joint Governance Committee for the Joint Management Agreement between Council and Rotorua for the meetings of Council Joint Governance Committee members on the 12th of July 2019 and the Rotorua Charitable Trust on the 16th of July 2019 be adopted, subject to the additional changes to the consultation section in recommendation 3A above.
Can I just
Yes.
raise a query, and Gina Rangi, you may be able to clarify this for me. Just in their wording between Council and Ngāti Raukawa, would that be more appropriate?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, Ngāti Raukawa refers to Raukawa in the south. Raukawa in the Waikato region is just Raukawa.
Thank you for that clarity.
Great. Moved, seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, carried. Complexes. And recommendation 3, that the Rotorua... Did you not have a mover? Was right, yeah. Yeah, Karen. Recommendation 3, that Rotorua Lakes Council commence and notify proposed Plan Change 3, significant natural areas, to the Rotorua District Plan as set out in the Plan Change Evaluation Report circulated to Council members. Moved, Councillor Stewart. Seconded, Councillor Donaldson. Is there any discussion? Right, so we're going to put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Wonderful, because that's very complex. Yeah. Yes.
I'd just like to thank the staff, Kim and Kate, for the work they've done in preparing this plan. It is an extremely complex piece of work, and it is very much about relationships with people, because it's their land and it's very personal, and it has they have worked extremely well to get us to this point. It's been a great committee, for a great process for the RMA committee. We've had a number of meetings on this, and we're delighted that at this point it will be going out for public consultation, but I really do commend the work, because I know there were probably some very tough moments, and I think we've reached a really pragmatic place with the recommendation that's going out. So we'll look forward to those submissions coming in due course.
Just following on from what Councillor Hunter's just said, I just said to Councillor Tapsell, this is one real proactive, positive outcome of the Te Arawa Partnership, and having the expertise around this table and at committee level, feeding stuff into staff that make the process so much easier. Because I know this particular issue has been languishing around this table for at least 20 years. And I'm delighted that with the relationships that you talked about, Councillor Hunt, that have been developed and progressed by staff, are now producing results for all Rotorua residents, not just one area. So well done.
I'd like to add that it adds strength to, remember, our innovation of having the Resource Management Act Committee. So that is something that is starting to show results. If we all tried to pore over the detail as elected members. That's a lot of energy and extra time. So thank you for your work. It may be the last report that comes to us before the election, so thank you to those members. Councillor.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to support Councillor Hunt's and endorse Councillor Hunt's comments around the effort that the staff put in, because so much of our land in our district isn't just private land and private ownership, it's actually in Māori ownership. And I do know many of the land block, or some of the land blocks had multiple owners, as they usually do. Some of them were small, owners couldn't be found, and when Kim explained the time and effort it took, you know, that's a big piece of work to have been done and to have been completed. So, yes, that's really all very, very commendable. Thank you.
This undertaking is a new staff member. Well done. Now you know the rohi. Right, now I need a resolution to go into public excluded where there are 2 items for consideration: to adopt the confidential minutes of the previous meeting on the 27th of June and a verbal update request for land transfer Karamu-Takenga Springs. And the reasons for that are to enable commercial or industrial negotiations or commercial sensitivity. You move, thank you, and Councillor Hunt seconds. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. We'll just have a 5-minute break and then we'll